as comes on, you can hear me in full flood now. Welcome to this, where are we now? June Development Committee meeting. I'm Pauline Grove-Jones and I'll be chairing today. Anyone who hasn't attended one of these meetings before, the officers who provide and present our reports and offer technical advice sit either side of me on the top table. And in front of me here are all the wonderful members of the Development Committee who will be making decisions on the items on the agenda. If I could ask the officers to introduce themselves, starting with you, Jeff, moving around, and then you, Fiona.
Good morning, my name is Jeff Lyon. I'm the Development Management and Major Projects Manager.
Good morning, I'm Lauren Gregory. I'm the Democratic Services Officer and I'll be doing the minutes of this meeting.
Morning. Oh, sorry.
And I'm Senior Planning Officer and I'm Presenting Officer this morning.
I'm Darryl Watson, Development Management Team Leader.
Good morning, I'm Kathy Batchelor, Senior Landscape Officer.
Morning, I'm Fiona Croxton, Solicitor for the Council.
Thank you, everyone. Before we start the formal business, I just want to say that if any of you hear a fire alarm, which will be quite loud, it's for real. Don't panic anybody, just follow the officers. There's 3 exits, 1, 2, 3. Don't use the lift, just calmly go down the stairs and you congregate in front of the building or behind. If you have mobile phones with you, could you please turn to silent or turn them off? And if we need to, we will break at approximately 11 for a comfort break, cup of coffee. Now to the agenda. Apologies for absence, Lauren, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Angie Fitch-Tillett and Councillor Matthew Taylor.
And substitutes?
Councillor John Toy is present as a substitute for Councillor Angie Fitch-Tillett.
Thank you. Could we now look at the minutes for the last meeting of the 12th of May? I have no intention of going through it all, but has anybody got any problems with any of the pages that have come through? No? Can I then ask that we have someone to propose that we approve the minutes? Councillor Kershaw, and second, Councillor John Toy. Thank you. Any items of urgent business, Lauren?
No, there are no items of urgent business, Chairman.
No objections received on those. The order of the business will be as stands, so we will go first with Blakeney, then with Holt. And any declarations of interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary? Yes, Councillor Holiday.
I'm not predetermined, but I'm predisposed in the Blakeney case.
Thank you. Thank you. That doesn't stop you from voting. You just listen to what's going on. Make your mind up. So now we go to the officers' reports. The first one is for Blakeney, PF/21/2711, erection of a new agricultural workers' dwelling, Saxlingham Road, Blakeney. And Officer Owen, you are presenting.
Okay, the application is agenda item 8 on pages 15 to 28 and associated slides.
Can I just stop you a minute, Chair? Can you all hear? No, you can't. You can't at the back. Can you just pull that towards you? There we go.
Okay. So the application is for the erection of a new agricultural workers dwelling at New Barn Farm, Saxlingham Road, Blakeney. The application has been called in for consideration by the committee by the ward member for the reasons set out on page 17. Before moving on to the presentation, I just want to highlight a few issues within the report. First and foremost, it's important to stress that the principle of a dwelling in this location has been considered by the council under the previously refused outline application PO 201100. As set out on page 20 of the report, that application was supported by an agricultural appraisal, which an independent specialist consultant confirmed demonstrated that there was a functional need for a dwelling for a full-time worker to live at the property for the proper ongoing operation of the farming enterprise. The previous application was, as a result, not refused for reasons relating to principle, and this is a material consideration of significant weight. As the previous application was determined under delegated powers, a summary of the assessment carried out based on the advice of the council's consultant is included on pages 21 and 22 of the report for completeness. The main issue in this case, therefore, relates to the landscape impact of the proposal on the Norfolk Coast AONB and undeveloped coast, and this is discussed on pages 23 and 24 of the report. The proposed dwelling would be sited within the AONB but outside of the treble SI on which the existing farm and associated buildings are within. Given the sensitivity of this open location, the aim should be to accommodate any new built form into its setting as unobtrusively as possible. The form and appearance of the dwelling, along with appropriate landscape mitigation, are therefore key design elements in effectively limiting any adverse and visual impact on this nationally designated landscape. Following extensive negotiations with the applicant by officers, landscaping proposals have been put forward, which will provide belts of trees to the north, northeast of the proposed dwelling, which I'll go in more detail in the presentation. Officers feel that the landscaping now proposed is sufficiently robust and proportionate to mitigate the significant landscape and visual impact resulting from the siting of a dwelling in this open location within the nationally designated landscape. The site is also within the undeveloped coast area, as is the existing farming enterprise. As an essential need for a dwelling in connection with existing farming enterprise has been demonstrated and accepted, the proposed development is considered to require this location. In addition, the landscape mitigation proposed is also considered to represent betterment by virtue of helping to screen an existing farm building in this location. In the light of the previously demonstrated need, the landscape mitigation proposed is considered acceptable, and the proposal is considered acceptable in all other respects, and it's therefore considered the planning balance weighs in favour of the proposal. I'll now go through the presentation. So in terms of location, the site is located at the northern end of the main complex of existing farm buildings which comprise New Barn Farm. The site is located in a corner of a crop field which slopes slightly in a northerly direction. Crop fields lie to the east of the site and west, and to the west is a public right-of-way known as Blakeney BR5, which is separated from the site by a hedge. There's a private access track which runs from the site southwesterly until it meets Saxon Road, and the private right-of-way extends along this track. That's another image just to show the site in context. You see it's slightly to the north of the existing grain store building and to the west of an existing hedge line. This is an extract from the submitted landscaping schedule, landscape management plan. The next slide will show, I appreciate you can't read the detail, the next slide will hopefully expand on that. But essentially, the proposal provides belts of trees to the north, to the northwest and east of the proposed new dwelling. The trees within the belts are intended to be a mix of native species. To the outer side of the tree belts on the north and eastern side, rows of native species hedge planting are proposed to form a natural sized dense scrub hedge to buffer the new tree belts and assist in providing a dense year-round screen to the site. In addition, a new native hedge is proposed to surround the new building on two sides to enclose the garden of the new property and reinforce the western boundary hedge between the site and the Blakeney Esker. And this latter hedge will also incorporate trees. So this hopefully will explain that visually a little clearer. So essentially the western boundary hedge will be enhanced and added to, infilled with hedging and trees. And the development will be screened by trees and hedging, which will also help to screen the existing grain store building, which is quite prominent, as you'll see when you come to the photographs. So there's some aerial views showing the site in context, and in particular the relationship with the existing grain store building, which lies to the north of the main complex of farm buildings. The view on the right-hand side shows the relationship of the site with the village of Blakeney to the north. It's quite self-explanatory. This shows the A and B boundary in which the site sits. And this next site shows the boundary of the treble SI boundary. As you can see, the site will be outside of that boundary. Some elevations of the proposed dwelling. West and east elevations, north and south elevations. This slide again indicates the relationship with the existing grain store building, which essentially is a backdrop to where the dwelling would be sited. Obviously, without the intended landscaping in place. So, in terms of some photographs, this shows the front of the existing grain store building with a concrete pad which is intended to provide parking for the new dwelling, and the site would be just to the north, as shown. So these are some closer views and a longer view towards the existing building. This shows the existing woodland behind, which essentially will be extended to include both the new dwelling and help to screen the building. View looking east. Another view of the existing concrete pad in front of the grain store building. This is the existing dwelling on site, occupied by the applicant's parents. View from the existing farm track and a view from the access road from Saxingham Road. Summary of the main issues. As I've explained, the main issue is considered to be the landscape impact on the Norfolk Coast A and B and the undeveloped coast. A couple of comments to make on the officer recommendation. The GRAMS payment has been paid, and I'd just like we have on reflection recommending a change to the agricultural occupancy condition to to better reflect the standard wording we would normally use. To reflect the fact that the business could actually be, the name of the business could change, or the entire farming enterprise could be sold off in the future, and restricting it to the current business name wasn't considered appropriate or reasonable, and wouldn't meet the required tests. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Jane. We now go to the speakers. I have Mrs. Rosemary Thew from the parish. Would like to come up, Mrs. Thew. I think you know how this works, don't you? So that's it. You have 3 minutes from the moment you start.
Thank you, Chairman. Blakeney Parish Council objects to this application. The grounds for objection have throughout been that this is a particularly sensitive site. It is within an area of outstanding natural beauty and close to the Blakeney Esker. The area of outstanding natural beauty provides for a sense of remoteness, tranquility, wildness, and dark skies. The site is recognised for its geological importance. The proposed development would be detrimental to all of this, and of course to the open coastal character of the undeveloped coast. Blakeney Parish Council recognises the work done by the applicant to ameliorate the impact of the development. The planting of trees may reduce impact, but not for a considerable time until they become well established. The development will be visible from the nearby Langham and Saxlingham roads, and also from the sea. The design and access statement acknowledges that the building could stand out in the local landscape, thus explaining why the design materials have been chosen. This is an iconic site with some of the best views in North Norfolk. Accepting that further accommodation is necessary for the farm to operate, Blakeney Parish Council wonders why the proposed development is in the position chosen. As the landscape officer has said, this open location is within a nationally designated landscape. It is particularly obtrusive given the sloping nature of the land. If building is required, an alternative site to the south of the existing bungalow would be far less obtrusive. This is an area of natural beauty which must be protected, and whilst not arguing against the need for the farm workers' accommodation, Blakeney Parish Council believes the proposed location to be wrong. We would urge the Development Committee to reject the application and to encourage the applicant to look at a less obtrusive location within the curtilage of the farmstead. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Thew. I don't believe we have any objecting speakers. We have a supporting speaker, Lindsay Reid. Would like to come up, Mrs. Reid. You push the little man's head so you can speak. You have 3 minutes from there. It's the third one. That's it.
Good morning, everyone. Jonathan Cubitt and his wife Lucy have asked me to read out their statement today. I think it's safe to say this has been an extremely stressful 2 years for them, and there is a huge amount at stake for them personally and professionally. There are a few key points I want to highlight now before going into the finer details. The dwelling proposed is modest and low-key, a small 3-bedroom single-storey dwelling, not a grand design. Mr. and Mrs. Cubitt and their young family want to live and contribute to the community of Blakeney. They are not second homeowners. They wish to manage and continue to grow a sustainable farm business, supplying produce and other local businesses, who in turn serve the tourism and hospitality sectors of North Norfolk. They wish to be an integral part of and contribute to the local economy. I'd like to go into a bit more detail now about the farm. Mr. Cubitt is the 4th generation of his family to farm at New Barn Farm. Since taking the helm of the family business, due to the imminent retirement of the applicant's parents, he has successfully moved the farm away from solely arable farming to a diversified mixed farming operation. Mr. Cubitt has focused on growing specialty produce and crops, as well as rearing livestock, to farm in a more environmentally sensitive and sustainable manner. This has been a huge success. A new barn farm now supplies produce to over 40 local outlets, including restaurants, farm shops, delis, and 3 wholesale companies. Fresh produce is picked to order and delivered within hours, so customers benefit from the high-quality local produce with traceability and reduced food miles. This intrinsic link to local outlets and the wider local economy is recognised in both the outline and full planning applications, where approximately 19 local businesses and residents supported the proposal. Let's move on to the dwelling. The Cubits are not planning anything outlandish. This is a modest single-storey dwelling that is essential for Mr. Cubit and his young family to carry on farming in a viable way and to continue to supply their growing base of customers. This will be their sole residence. Mr. Cubit's current very early and late commute is unsustainable from many perspectives, including the demands of seasonal livestock and the nature of growing fresh produce. And of course, it is having a detrimental effect on family life, which is integral to the family business. Since the independent consultant concluded the essential need for the proposed dwelling in February 2021, Mr. Cubit has worked tirelessly with the District Council to find the most appropriate location and to overcome the initial landscaping and visual impact issues. A joint site visit to New Barn Farm with Mr. Cubit, Jane Owen, Kathy Batchelor and Darryl Watson concluded that the current proposed location to be the most suitable. The latest landscaping plan represents input and feedback from the District Council and the landscaping officer and screens not only the new dwelling, but also screens the existing modern grain store. Much rests on today's outcome and on the committee. We hope that you can see how Mr. Cubit and the District Council have worked together over the past 2 years in order for the planning officer to reach her recommendation for approval. We very much hope you feel able to support this and help the family-run local business to continue to thrive and support the local economy. Thank you for your time.
Good heavens, that's well timed. Thank you, Mrs. Sweet. If you'd like to return to your seat. I now go to the local member, Councillor Holiday. You have 5 minutes.
This is a very finely balanced and complex application, which has been most excellently summarised by the planning officer. The applicant is a highly regarded farmer whose sustainably grown fresh local produce is deservedly popular. His farm sits in an incredibly sensitive and highly valued landscape. There is an established need for an agricultural dwelling on this land. There is significant community support for the applicant to live somewhere on his land and some support for him to live in the specific location chosen and for the design of this particular dwelling. There are objections from the community as to the specific location chosen and a feeling that an alternate site should have been explored. The objections centre around the damage this development will have on the North Norfolk Coastal AMB and the Wibberton Downs SSSI in terms of visual intrusion. The planning and landscape officers have worked extremely hard to make this proposal acceptable. Mitigation has been offered, which the landscape officer finds satisfactory. Their final position is, notwithstanding significant conflict with key spatial policies, which remains, objections previously lodged by landscape with regard to conflict with local plan policies, EN 1, 2 and section 176 have been sufficiently addressed. However, there remain community concerns, and I bring this case to you on behalf of Blakeney Parish Council. Let's just remind ourselves what's special about an AONB and a SSSI. The natural beauty criteria required of an AONB include landscape and scenic quality, relative wildness, and relative tranquility. And the definition of a SSSI is that it offers special features in terms of flora, fauna, geographic or physiological features, all of which the community values highly, and the LPA has a duty to conserve and enhance. The community concern is regarding the impact of the development on these natural beauty criteria and special features, which might be lessened if the development were positioned elsewhere. This has to be balanced against the support for the proposal and the planning officer's assessment. The impression is that this proposal doesn't comply with EN 1, 2, 3, 9 and paragraph 176 of the NPPF, but I'm interested to hear your views.
Is that it, Victoria? Oh, right, thank you. I now throw open to the members who would like to speak. Councillor Heinrich. Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. May I proceed? We have to be clear, I think, that this is an application for an agricultural workers dwelling. We've got to consider it in that context. It's not a speculative application for some large new house in the countryside, which we would certainly object to. We also have a situation where the applicants work very, very closely with planners to get an agreeable and acceptable scheme. This isn't something that's come through from a developer who just hopes they can bounce us into a decision. This has been carefully worked through with officers. We have to respect that. We look at the report, page 21 sets out very clearly the criteria for allowing a development such as this, both by paragraph 79 of the MPFF, by our own core strategy policy H05. The independent consultant's evaluation of the application against these criteria is extremely thorough, and I think the conclusions are very clear. We have to take note of that. In principle, we know it's acceptable under SS1, SS2 and H05 of our policies. I can understand why some object, but I don't think they necessarily understand the operational needs of a relatively small family farm. Clearly, this is a viable operation. Well diversified use of land and resources, adapted well to the local markets, to the soils and terrain and scarce labour resources. Parts of that operation clearly depend on staff being on site. Sheep, nature's most suicidal animal, require careful monitoring. Vegetable and salad crops have to be picked when at their best because it's a very discerning market this farm appears to be serving. And that often has to take place outside what others outside farming would consider normal working hours. There's no normal working hours on a farm in Madam Chairman. The produce is local, it's keeping food miles down, it's environmentally sustainable. If we look at the issues the officers have raised, we've got no objection from the landscape officer. We have no objection from public rights of way. We have no objection from Natural England, no objection from environmental health, nor from economic growth. The Norfolk Coast Partnership comments have been dealt with. There is a high quality landscaping scheme which will not only shield this low impact dwelling, but will also go some way to hiding that rather ugly, perfectly otherwise acceptable barn. The design of the dwelling is, in my view, a very high standard. It reflects the local vernacular and that of other dwellings on the farm. It's reminiscent to me of a converted traditional cart shed or small barn. It fits in the landscape. It's subservient to the grain store. And it will be well hidden anyway by the landscaping. The need for that dwelling is proven. The quality of the design and landscaping is good, and I'm going to therefore propose that we accept the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Andrew Brown, Councillor Andrew Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Well, Councillor Heinrich, in the style of a Premiership manager who has to alter his team talk at half time just because they've just scored minutes before half time, I'm going to have to modify what I was going to say because Councillor Heinrich has covered quite a lot of the points. I thank the officer for such a succinct and comprehensive report. We are aware on this committee that this type of application is very sensitive because it's one of a handful of exceptions that allows residential development in otherwise policy constrained areas. So it's vital that we consider this application extremely carefully. I've said this many times on this committee that this authority should support sustainable farming and preserve or protect food security, particularly in these times, given what's happening elsewhere in the world at the moment. I pick up on what Councillor Heinrich said, that the important starting point with this application is planning policy H05 and whether the 5 tests are satisfied in that policy. And we see on page 21 that they are. We see that out of the 8 consultees, only 1 objects. We see an equivalence in support and objections across residents and the parish council. I think something which I think perhaps needs teasing out of the report is to what extent were alternative sites considered within the curtilage of the farm operation as it currently stands. It seems to me to be that there should be a preference to site it within existing boundaries rather than extending the boundary by creating a site on the edge in the AONB. I'm not aware of any constraint in the triple SSI that would prevent the building being located closer to the existing parental bungalow, but I'm quite happy to be corrected and advised by the officer on that. And I just wonder to what extent alternative sites were considered and why they were ruled out before making a decision. I would just go on to add briefly, as it's so close to the Wiverton Downs Dark Skies area, I would expect there to be absolutely maximum attention paid to the condition on light pollution delegated to the Director of Planning. And I don't see a note in the direction to the Director of Planning that we should be registering this as a local land charge, as an agricultural workers dwelling. I suspect the solicitor might be able to just confirm or clarify that, and why that isn't included in the recommendation from this committee to the Director of Planning. That is, I think, all I have to say, Madam Chairman. Not a lot, but it is.
Thank you, Andrew. Could I first ask Jane what the criteria was that said that this was the particular site rather than moving it nearer to the existing building? So.
Apologies. This is in fact the third potential siting that officers have considered, which is why it's taken a considerable time to get to this point. The first site came forward as part of the previously refused outline application, which was outside the triple SI, but in a more prominent part within the AMB, further away from the existing grain store building and further away from the existing boundary hedge, which provides some screening and which we've now negotiated some enhancement works to. The second site was within the existing farm complex. The difficulty with that is that that brings it within the treble SI, and notwithstanding the existing farm falls within the treble SI, that is a significant constraint equal to the siting within an AONB. We tried to engage with Natural England to discuss this further. We even invited them to a site visit to discuss it with us. I didn't get a response from Natural England to that. So I believe the applicant tried to engage with Natural England to explore that further, and we were unfortunately unsuccessful in that, which left us with no option but to refuse it on the advice of Natural England, because their response was that there was insufficient information for them to consider it. They also said that the applicant should consider other options not on the treble SI. So there are difficulties whether you position it within the treble SI or outside of the treble SI. It's literally it's literally between a rock and a hard place, if I can say that. It's been a very lengthy and protracted negotiations, and we feel that this site, together with the mitigation planting proposed, is an acceptable outcome.
Thank you. Did you want to come back?
Yes, please, Madam Chair.
Just
Thank you.
quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. Yeah. Well, I presume that Natural England were perhaps working, spending their time on nutrient neutrality and we're too busy to respond to, but perhaps not. So basically, what we're saying is that the constraints in the AONB and the SSSI are equal, would be equal in the eyes of Natural England, but Natural England take more interest in SSSIs than they do in the AONB. That doesn't seem to me to be really something which is helpful here. I don't think it makes it any easier to justify putting
Right.
a property in the AONB.
Our senior landscape officer wants to speak. Kathy?
Yes, thank you. It might just be worth clarifying that Wimbledon Downs SSSI is designated for its geological significance. Therefore, Natural England look very closely at any excavations into that. And that's why, as an SSSI, it's particularly sensitive for any development, to accommodate any development. So they would have engaged, but they would have wanted a very lengthy process. And, you know, whether or not they would have deemed that it would be possible to put foundations for a building on there, we didn't manage to engage and establish that. We also looked and talked to the applicant about whether there was any possibility of reuse of existing farm buildings on the site, but for various reasons that wasn't viable either. So we really tried to explore every single option, and we did consider that although there is significant landscape and visual impact with the site that we are proposing and have agreed now, for a small single dwelling, the amount of mitigation that the applicant is willing to put in will help to enhance. It is in line with the rolling heath and arable landscape type, which talks about increasing woodland and increasing ecological connectivity. And I think the scale of the mitigation proposed will result in enhanced habitat. So that needs to be considered as well. But I just thought it was worth explaining the significance of the SSSI. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. That was a very good explanation of the situation, landscaping, etc. Okay. Just to point to the recommendations on page 27, external lighting is mentioned, Andrew, and that normally takes in downlighters and restrictions in time when external lighting can be. Well, in fact, no external lighting, only basically a light, possibly if somebody approaches the front door. I now ask our legal beagle, Fiona, please.
Yes, there is an agricultural occupancy condition, restriction. It's being imposed as a planning condition. A Section 106 agreement could have been requested, although it's unnecessary because it's being imposed as a condition. And if a Section 106 agreement were to have been entered into, that would have been a local land, put on the local land charges. But here, a condition, a restrictive condition, is being imposed.
Thank you.
Well, my recommendation, Madam Chairman, would be for a Section 106 agreement. I think it's important that it is recorded as a local land charge. We have legions of instances where planning conditions are challenged, and I don't think it's appropriate that it should be challenged.
Officer Hurst, Jeff wants to speak. I'm sorry, Jeff, I can't help myself. Officer Lyons would like to speak.
I mean, obviously, it's a choice for the committee as to how they want to condition a scheme, but I would say actually there are more potential slip-ups with a 106 obligation than there are with a condition. Generally, conditions are stronger as a way of securing something than a legal agreement, would be my view of 20 years dealing with those sort of things. So it's a standard way that we would secure this sort of thing is via a condition for agricultural dwellings. So that's what we're suggesting the committee should do if they're reminded to approve it.
I'm going to move on now, Andrew, because you've had a good old bite at the cherry. Richard, please, Richard Kershaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it is finely balanced, but I think this is a very well designed building. I think the the amount of trees and screening around it is excellent. And I'd commend the officers for the work they've done with the applicant. I think it's first rate. It's also, it's by a concrete pad in the shadow of a large agricultural barn. And with my portfolio holder's hat on for sustainable growth, we need to support farmers. You know, farmers are having a very hard time. They have uncertainty. This is someone who's obviously diversified from arable and animal farming. He's supplying 40 restaurants and outlets. Yeah, this is a modest development, and I think the conditions are sound, and I'd be more than happy to second this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. I'll put you down as seconder. Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, just about everything I was going to say has been said by Councillor Heinrich, actually, who made a fantastic appraisal of this application. And I have to also thank the officers for the efforts that they've gone to in working with the applicant on this. This is a difficult case, and this committee normally sits here discussing ways to protect the AONB, but the mitigations provided in this report by an independent assessor as well have shown that this application is acceptable under our policies. I'd like to congratulate the farmer for his diversification, as Councillor Kershaw did. It's great that you know, we're getting away from this monoculture that we see in much of our AONB. In actual fact, when I look at it, it's an industrial landscape, and it's lovely to see a farmer coming forward and diversifying in the way that he is. Yeah, and let's keep him in the area. So I would have seconded this, Madam Chair. I think the mitigation and the numbers of rows of mitigation will do a lot to hide that barn. It's always a mystery to me that barns seem to be acceptable in the OMB, but we can't build a nice little bungalow. You know, so to shield it, to me, is also a positive in that area. And it will help join up, when I was looking at the map, it'll help join up some of the biodiversity streams along either side of the buildings and the farm buildings. So yeah, I'm going to vote in favour of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Rarely, and I know a lot has already been said, have I seen an application that has gone to such detail for a single building. Yes, a lot of time has been taken over, but this has been very carefully passed about as if a football was on a field, not kicked about. It's been passed about from one to other with an amazing amount of continuity. I don't think I've ever seen in my time here an application so finely balanced but so greatly detailed. And I think as a committee, we all understand that there are exceptions to the rule. And I think this case against core policies fits into that exception. I also do understand the reservations from the local parish council. But I think even if we pass this with approval, with the conditions and everything else, I would hope that the parish council would see that we've laboured long and hard. The officers have worked to the nth degree with the applicant to get what I see in a narrow, balanced situation, the right result. And that to me is what this committee is all about: common sense, prudence, and a realisation sometimes that the exception is better.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak before we go to the vote? No? Well, then we are going to move to page 27, which is the recommendations as listed there. And we are going for approval for this application. The proposer for approval is Councillor Heinrich and seconded by Councillor Kershaw. And Lauren, can you read out? Yes, with the amended wording to the occupancy condition. All right. Are we all right?
Okay.
Lauren, can you read out the names?
Yep. Councillor Brown, 4. Councillor Fisher,
4.
Councillor Grove-Jones, 4. Councillor Heinrich,
4.
Councillor Holiday,
Abstain.
Councillor Kershaw,
4.
Councillor Lloyd,
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle,
4 ticks all the boxes.
Councillor Pearce, Councillor Toy,
4.
Councillor Withington, 4, and Councillor Yusimi.
4.
So that is 11 votes for and 1 abstention. The vote is carried.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Silver. Right, now we're now past to the second application. This is on page 29 for Holt PF /22-00226, construction of a 2-story side extension, Hempstead Road, Holt. And I don't think we have any parish or town speaker, no. But we do have a written statement from an objector, Mr. Alan Smith, and who's reading this out? That, could you read it out?
Thank you, Chair. This is a planning statement in objection to the proposal. It's in addition to the letter of objection from the owners and occupiers of 19 Hempstead Road, which the statement is made by Mr. Norman, who's acting on behalf of the objector. He said he hopes members had read and considered. We would like to make the following additional points for consideration and clarification. 1, in the planning report, reference is made to impact on the privacy of the front gardens of the properties to the rear. However, it fails to note that not all have rear gardens and their sole amenity space is directly to the front of the houses. This will be severely impacted upon from the proposed extension. This could be considered to be in contravention of Article 8, the right to respect for private and family life within the Human Rights Act. The second point is under policy EM4. Note the planning report refers to the property being set back from the road. While it is acknowledged that it's not on the road edge, the setback is very minor, approximately 2 metres, maintaining the prominent roadside positioning of the dwelling. Further, the argument that the extension gives symmetry by the use of matching materials is at odds, as it is clear that the extension elongates the existing frontage with no setback and a minimal difference in ridge heights. It will be increasing the overall size of the property to an extent in which the original style and character is lost. It is currently a balanced 3-bay cottage with central access and lean-to extension. The proposal would result, without subservience of the proposal, to unbalance the original cottage character. It is my opinion that the planner has outlined a strange interpretation of policy EM4 with a disregard for the impact on neighbours despite acknowledging it exists. We believe that it's not in compliance with policy EM4 of the North Norfolk core strategy or the North Norfolk design guide. We entirely agree with the points noted in Councillor Georgie Perry-Warren's statement and her request that the application be refused. That's the end of the objection. Thank you, Chair.
No, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Darryl. I'm having one of my moments. I do apologise. Darryl Watson is now going to present. Better late than never, Darryl.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, if anybody wants anything in that reiteration, I'm happy to do it afterwards. This is application reference 20 PF 22 0226. It's item 9, starting on page 29 of the agenda. This is for a 2-storey side extension, Orchard Cottage, 23 Hempstead Road. The property's front elevation faces Hempstead Road and is set slightly back from it. To the north, there's a terrace of small dwellings at 15 to 21 Hempstead Road, with a shared access to them between the side of number 23 and number 13 Hempstead Road. The garden stroke outdoor amenity areas to this terrace of properties is to their fronts facing the application site. The proposed extension will be on the northwest side of the property on the footprint of the existing single-storey side section, but not the store at the very end of it, which is shown on page 7 of the presentation. The extension will provide an additional bedroom and ensuite bathroom. As referred to in the report, the proposal has been amended during the consideration of the application. The eaves and ridge of the extension will be set very slightly lower than those of the existing dwelling. Holt Town Council have no objection, but there is a representative has been received from the occupier of 19 Hempstead Road, which is one of the properties to the rear of the site. The grounds of objection are summarised in the report, and I've just read out the additional objections from them. The two main issues for consideration are, firstly, the design of the proposed development and its effect on the character and appearance of the existing dwelling and surrounding area. As mentioned, the eaves and ridge height have been stepped down slightly to help give the extension some subservience. A false chimney has been included, and the proposed external materials would match those of the existing dwelling. The second issue is the effect on the amenities of the living condition and living conditions of the occupiers of the dwellings to the rear at 15 to 21 Hempstead Road. With regards to loss of light and overshadowing, it is acknowledged there would be some impact, but not to a degree that would justify refusal, given the separation between them and the proposed development. With regards to privacy, the first floor bedroom window in the rear of the extension has been omitted in the revised plans and replaced by a roof light to serve the bedroom and a small window serving the bathroom, which will be obscure glazed, as can be seen on the slide showing the proposed rear elevation on page 9 of the presentation. The roof light to the bedroom will be high enough to prevent any direct views out of it. The separation distance between this window and the first floor windows of the closest dwellings, which are 15 and 17 Hempstead Road, is slightly in excess of the separation distance is suggested in the amenity criteria within the North Norfolk Design Guide SPD. Furthermore, there is an existing first floor dormer in the rear elevation of the property, which serves a bedroom, which would potentially allow some views across to some of the properties to rear, although currently it is restricted by tall trees and shrubs. With regards to the effect on the occupier of 19 Hempstead Road, the objector, the separation between its principal elevation and the rear elevation of the extension would be 15 metres, which also complies with the amenity criteria in the design guide. This suggests a minimum of 9 metres between a bedroom window and a bathroom window. Finally, because of the tight-knit relationship between the existing dwellings, there's also likely to be a degree of co-overlooking of their amenity areas as existing. I just run through the presentation quickly. I assume it's been circulated to all members. Yeah, this just shows the application site outlined in red, the row of cottages, 15 to 21 Hempstead Road. Are these here? You see there's a shared access running between 13 and 23. This just shows the aerial view, and you can just see the front gardens, which are the only gardens to these properties, in where it's slightly green there. That just shows the existing block plan in relationship with the surrounding properties. This is a proposed block plan. The extension will be pretty much on the footprint of the existing single-storey side extension, except here there's a sort of there's a little store as existing, and that would just be left open with a gate through, I believe. This is the existing elevations. This is the front facing Hempstead Road. This is the rear that faces the properties to the rear, and this is the existing side extension, which will be replaced by a 2-storey side extension. That's the elevation you would see looking from the shared access. this shows the existing floor plan. The extension would sit over this bit that's annotated as a sitting room study, but it would not include this little store area here, which is sort of at the end of that single story lean-to piece. The emboldened bit shows the proposed front elevation facing Hempstead Road. You can see the eaves and ridge are slightly lowered compared to the existing dwelling. And that's the proposed rear elevation. The roof light here serves the bedroom. This is the bathroom window, which replaced a bedroom window, which would have been sort of in that same section of wall, but underneath where the roof light is now. And in this greyed out bit, you can see an existing dormer that serves a bedroom. That's the proposed side elevation to the north from the, looking at it from the access. That's a proposed ground floor plan, which is just basically omits the little store on the end. And that shows the proposed first floor plan. That's the bathroom window I referred to, which will be obscure glaze, and that shows the outline of the roof light. They're just some of the separation distances, just for reference. As I said, the object is number 19, which is here, but the separation distance in that case would be 15 metres, which still complies with the Design Guide SPD amenity criteria. This is just a few photos of the site. The extension would replace this existing lean-to here. That's the main property. That's looking sort of towards Hempstead, so the extension would sit here on the far left. That's looking towards the A148, and that's the flank wall of the of number 13. Again, that's looking at it from the street. The extension would sit in here. There we can see numbers 15, 15 and 21 sort of off at this end of that terrace of houses. That's the side elevation looking from as existing from within the shared access. And that's looking out of the shared access, so the extension would sort of sit in here. That's the flank wall of number 13. This is a view taken from the objector's property from the first floor, so the extension would sit in this area here. So the recommendation is for approval, subject to conditions set out on page 32 of the agenda. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darryl. Because I got it in the wrong order, does anybody wish to hear the written statement from the objectors again? Are we all right with that? What we've just heard, we heard it earlier. Yes. I just thought if you wanted to hear it in context. Okay. Then we then go on to a supporting speaker, Mr. Robson, if you'd like to come up. If you'd like to sit down here. Thank you, Gerard, if you wouldn't mind. Yes, you can stand as long as you speak fairly loudly.
I'll try to. How do I make this thing start?
It's on,
It's
Micah.
Oh, okay. Do I start?
As soon as you start, we give you 3 minutes and we'll tell you when that's up, Mr. Ross.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, hello, my name is Richard Robson. I'm the owner of 23 Hempstead Road, and I'm the one making this planning application. I've lived in Holt for 5 years nearly, and in that time, I bought it from a couple who I believe was a holiday home, and I turned it into my permanent residence. I live there all the time. During this time, I renovated everything about this house. I love it. And during this time, I've had 2 major health incidents. One is an aggressive form of cancer, which has caused me to be on the vulnerable list and causing other issues. And secondly, about 2 years ago, I had a cycle incident in the Estodi, and I got run over by a van trailer, which caused major injuries, traumatic brain injury, broken back, ribs, muscles, everything, vision, hearing. What I'm proposing with this is to make a simple, modest extension. So the side room at the moment is to demolish and rebuild it and put a room on top of it. The downstairs would be a bedroom come office where I work at home. And the top would be potentially for a carer. I've been told that I'd like to have issues later on in life. So the top would be for a bedroom and an ensuite for either myself or a carer if I needed it. It's on the same footprint as shown as the existing one, so it's not bigger than the outside lavatory has been removed. It's away from the boundary. In terms of the objection from 19, I don't think privacy is an issue. For example, as soon as I heard that there was an issue, I would change the light of the window at the back so it's opaque and couldn't be seen if they had worries. And I also know that 19 has an extra garden on the side of the house as well. All in all, it's a lovely place to live, Hold. I wish to future-proof this house, particularly for me, and to make it something I can live in for many years to come. And with that, I hope you'll approve this permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robson. Would you like to sit down? I now go to the local members. We have no, I don't think Mr. Varley, Councillor Varley has given us a presentation, but we have a written presentation or statement from Councillor Perry Warnes, which Jeff will now read out.
So this is a statement by Councillor George Perry Warnes. She says, in my opinion, the application does not comply with policy EN4's requirement that the extension should be suitably designed for the context in which it would be set. It says the scale and massing of the proposed building fails to relate sympathetically to the surrounding area and neighbouring buildings. In addition, the proposal would have a significantly detrimental effect on a residential amenity of nearby occupiers of the terrace of old railway workers' cottages. It would present an overbearing and imposing aspect out of keeping with the current skyline and block any winter sun from their outside area. As well as breaching our local plans policy EN4 in these regards, I consider that this application does not comply with the North Norfolk Design Guide. This requires that the effect of an extension on the character and appearance of the host property and on the amenities of the neighbouring properties is given as much weight as an applicant's requirements for extra space. She said the design guide also clearly states that extensions should be sited to avoid any loss of light or privacy to neighbours and not result in any, and she says, I stress the word any, overshadowing or overbearing effects. I have visited the site and seen for myself that these detrimental effects would indeed be the effect of the proposal. I am representing the interests of those long-term residents of Holt who would have to live with the consequences of these breaches of policy EN4. She says, I ask you to refuse this application for the reasons I have outlined. If, however, you are minded to approve, she says, I would ask that you delay making a decision which would have such an impact on local residents and arrange a site visit before making your assessment.
Thank you. I now go to the members. Does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I don't see this as a massive extension, but the thing that's concerning me, Officer, has anyone tested the light being blocked out if this extension goes ahead with regards to the other buildings? Because it's not, I don't think this is quite clear. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah, and what the case officers made a judgment on that, not a sort of sunlight and daylight calculation as such, as far as I'm aware. Thank you.
There is quite a distance, isn't there, from the row of the terraces? I think so. What's the average? It's about 10. Which slide is it? 15. The objectives number 19. How far away are they? 15 meters. That's 30 odd feet, isn't it? Right. Okay. Is that all right, Gerard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That clears it up for me. Thank you.
Good, excellent. Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, it's sad to see that the local members haven't attended, and I know that it's important that local, if you call something and you attend, I find that disappointing. I don't find this a controversial application at all. I think it sits well. I think it will actually probably improve the frontage of that road, and I'm more than happy to approve this application.
You're proposing then, are
I'm proposing, yes.
you? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, despite what's name, I think that the members that brought this to committee should have been here and represented it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you bring something forward, you should represent in person. I think that this is a sensitive extension, and I was very sad and upset to see that the applicant is facing such health problems. So therefore, it comes across as a necessary extension. And that overrides most things, because we cannot be seen as an responsible committee and authority of putting somebody in a situation that a modest extension will greatly enhance that person's lifestyle. It's not a real busy road. I know the area very well. My wife works just across the road, so I see it every day. It's true there will be a little light lost, and I mean a little. How do you describe a little? I think we've got to be sensible, proactive, and approve this. I have no problem in approving this. And I think this could have been done under delegated authority, but at the same time, it's here. But I also take what my learned colleague has just said. And if I look at the photographs, it would actually tidy and make the frontage of that road on that corner so much more presentable without extending the footfall, the size of the actual building in area. So I have no problem with this at all. Thank you.
Are you going to second this then, Nigel?
I hadn't thought on it, but I will gladly second this application and proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Toy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you to officers for the reports as well. This is about privacy and light. In terms of privacy, I think that's been covered by the changes made to the additions proposed. And also in terms of light, we can't be there all year round, but by using some of the facilities we have through Google Maps and things now, and taking street views and different times of day and things, I can't see, perhaps maybe in the depths of winter when the sun is really low, where we wouldn't have much light anyhow, that actually there's going to be a huge loss of light at all. So yeah, I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
I think possibly what will also in the minds of people who are in the terrace back is the fact that a view will be obscured. We have no right to a view, as we all know, but there is a view from that terrace out to the road, and with the extension, the view will be slightly obscured. So I thought I'd just point that out. Anyway, anybody else wish to speak on this? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I concur with my colleagues. I am able to support this application. Just to correct one or two things, I think it's said in the report that the scale and massing will increase by 50%. Not so. With the single-story extension being demolished, it's more likely to be around 25%. I don't think you need to be a serious mathematician to appreciate that. We see in the design guide that the guideline is a distance of 9 metres, and the distance between the neighbours and the property exceeds that. It's near 15 metres. I suspect that the neighbours are concentrating on interference with light because they realise that interference with their view is not something from their properties towards the property. It's not something that they can rely on in their objection. We see in the report that the design, appearance, amenity under policy EN4, ecology under EN9, and the highways in respect of parking policies are satisfied in the opinions of the officer. And I just remind everyone that that we are obliged to approve an application under planning policy unless material considerations dictate otherwise. And I can accept this application, and I would willingly second it if it hadn't been seconded already.
Thank you, Andrew. Anybody else wish to speak on this one? Yes.
I'd like to thank the officers for an excellent report covering this this topic. I've listened very carefully, and I can see that the elevation would actually enhance the streets. I think it will make it look more unison. I'm glad the subject of light has been covered, and delighted to see the installation of a bat enhancement measure, you know, to protect our bats. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, now we're going to go to the vote. The recommendation, as on page 32, is to approve, subject to the conditions stated. Any more? Have we added anything else? Is there anything else to say on this one? No, nothing. So as you can see, there's the obscure glazed window. I love the way we put in Pilkington level 5. Doesn't mean a thing to me, but it obviously does. It's a big ball. So we're now going to go to the vote. We have a proposer from Councillor Kershaw and seconded by Councillor Pearce to go with the officer's recommendation. Lauren, can you read us out the names?
Yes. Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Fisher.
4.
Councillor Grave-Jones.
4.
Councillor Heinrich.
4.
Councillor Holiday.
Against.
Councillor Kershaw.
4.
Councillor Lloyd.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Pearce. Councillor Toy.
4.
Councillor Withington. 4. Councillor Yusimi.
4.
So that is 11 votes for, 1 against, the votes carried.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Robson. If you can, David, if you'd like to go. I should be calling you Jeff first. Sorry, Jeff. I can't help myself.
You've scored an own goal for me. I wasn't proposing to say huge amounts on this item. I mean, the report's there on pages 33 and 34. It's really for members to note. It's very similar to a report I put last month. Suggestions on some additional information I'd like to include on future reporting. Just in the process of getting that set up with our colleagues in IT and other areas. So yeah, just to kind of keep you informed.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, thank you for the proposed changes. Really appreciate it. I think this is good stuff moving forward. Can I ask that as you develop it, we consider where we are with nutrient neutrality and how we represent how that may be skewing some of the results. Hopefully that makes sense because, you know, we will be looking for more extensions. There will be more things on hold and if that's not too onerous a task to try and separate that out so that we understand A, how the performance is going and B, what effect that's having on it, that would be useful. But no, thank you for the work and look forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Yes, if I may call you Jeff, not Hurst, but Lyons. Any further information that you might be able to dribble us out on the nutrient situation? I know that the cabinet member mentioned it. It's not in what we've got here, but because it's got a bearing on your operation, et cetera, all the way down the line. Is there any little nugget or tidbit that you can give us today?
So, yeah, there is a briefing. I think we've planned a briefing for I think it's the 23rd of June. So we'll obviously provide members with a full update as much as we can on that. There was a briefing on Monday for Norwich and South Norfolk and Broadland, Greater Norwich sort of partners, applicants and agents. So there's been some sort of high level sort of briefing for those people in that area. So yeah, we'll provide a detailed briefing for members on the 23rd. It's an evolving thing. I mean, there's regular meetings taking place every week on this. So it's, as I said before, it's occupying a lot of mine and other officers' time at the moment. But yeah, we're trying to find a positive way forward. And one of the first things is interpreting legal advice and making sure we properly understand what the requirements are on us as a local planning authority, because we are the competent authority under the habitat regs, and we have to make the right decisions when considering neutrality.
Jeff, can I just say that was the reason? It's not what it is, it's the time that it's taken and the effect it's had on everybody's work, commitment, decisions, because obviously we can't push anything forward for development either, so it knocks back to everybody. That was purely the reason. It wasn't anything else. You know, it's the time and the amount of effort that it's taking up.
Yes, John.
If it's helpful, I was going to say I can add, because Councillor Brown and I sit on the Duty to Cooperate Forum for this on the member side. We had a meeting this week, I think, wasn't it? Monday. Thank you, Andrew. That there has been some specialists in Royal Haskoning been appointed now who are going to work on something that the Natural England report, or the system of working is a very broad brush thing. And so there's a plan to develop something that is very particular to our area and the distinct areas. I don't want to go into too much so that it's all fully covered in the briefing, but there is some hope that come July, we may be able to start moving some of the easier applications once we've got some stuff that's worked off of the Natural England stuff. And then we'll have some more refined data. The hope again, and please don't hold my feet to the fire for these dates, but the hope is October, Royal Haskoning will have something that we can use further to make our decisions locally, because we are the authority. Theirs is a guideline that we work to. And then in the longer term, we are still looking at February next year before we have full mitigation measures in place. That is as we understand it at the moment. As Jeff rightly says, it's very fluid. It changes daily, but there is work going on. I think that's the main thing to assure members. Let's have the briefing on the 23rd. We continue to keep the website updated. And I don't know if Andrew's got anything to add to that. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, just a few points I'd like to add. Firstly, Royal Haskoning, Dutch company, very reputable, worked in Hampshire on the management plan, so they've got experience of seeing the process through from start to finish. That's very encouraging that the county council and district councils combined have managed to secure their services. The other thing that came out of the meeting was that Natural England may well have erred massively on the side of caution in terms of what level of improvement in pollution they would like to see. So there may be some wriggle room there. And interestingly, particularly for this committee, what came out of the meeting was that there is still divided legal opinion on whether planning permissions with reserved matters prior to 16th of March can proceed or not, as compared to full planning permissions that were granted before 16th of March, which can. That was my understanding. So those are the 3 points that I wanted to make. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Just one moment, John. I do know that protracted timeline was mentioned before. It's been mentioned in the paper, I think, Andrew, not this week, but the week before. Andrew and I read the same Saturday paper, you see, so we know what's going on. And it is causing quite a lot of distress, because obviously it's people's homes, people's businesses are being held back. So we need to work very, very quickly and firmly on this and make sure that that we can pass through as many applications as possible. I think that's so, isn't it, Jeff? Yes. Go on then, Gerard.
So you were looking at, I was busy writing stuff down. I agree with what my fellow councillors have said. However, if you look at the figures, they're actually pretty good. I mean, they're going the right way, Jeff, so well done for that. And just to point out, the last two applications we've had today, nutrient neutrality seems to have been sorted out. The extension to the side, but basically there's no extra people living in the house. So a lot of our applications are already addressing that. And I looked at an application in Neatishead just last Friday, I think it was. And the first thing that they pointed out to me was that they're putting like efforts to addressing the neutrality by not going into main sewers type of thing. So a lot of our applications now are addressing this already. So to me, it looks like it's going the right way. I know this doesn't include big builders and what have you. That's a completely separate thing. But I'm hoping we're going to see far more applications coming through that go through quickly because they're already addressing this issue, rather than it all being backlogged, you know. Because poor old Jeff, at some point, he won't be able to sleep at night with all these applications. And just on that last point, Madam Chair, isn't it a good job that Matthew's not up there, because you struggle with his name as well.
Dear, I always want to call you Gerard Manley Hopkins. I have terrible literary things here, you know, well, not necessarily football, but everything else. Yes, Andrew.
Just for Gerard's benefit, the reason why we've been able to deal with the two applications today, firstly, is Blayton is outside the nutrient neutrality boundary and is not caught by the embargo. And secondly, in Holt, it creates no new overnight accommodation. It's a minor application, so they're not caught by the nutrient neutrality embargo that we're currently experiencing in other areas of the district, just to clarify that.
It's interesting, isn't it? For my own interest, where does cesspit sit within this situation with disposal of wastewater? Yes, come on, Jeff.
What a question to be asked.
Well, you know, it used to be in these rural areas, that's what it was, cesspits and dunny bins and such like, you know, and buckets.
Yeah. I mean, I'll start by saying it's important to try and remain optimistic about how we can solve this problem, because it's a massive challenge and there's no escaping the fact it is having a huge impact. And there's a lot of frustrated people, not just applicants and agents, but there's a lot of planning officers who are also equally frustrated and unsure how we help applicants solve this problem. Yes, there are lots of discussions taking place. I mean, there are lots of landowners who we need to engage with to see how they can help us solve the problem, because it's going to come from those sorts of discussions with landowners, providing wetland habitats and other sort of short-term and longer-term and medium-term mitigation solutions. Just going back to the point about the sort of disposing it by non-mains drainage, that's probably how I best describe it. That doesn't necessarily overcome the issue, because there's still an outfall from that drainage point, or you'll get your waste taken away to somewhere else. So it doesn't necessarily overcome the issue, because you still have to manage that outfall and where that water goes. So it can help, but it's not necessarily the solution just to have a cesspit and a week, because that's in itself requires a permit from the Environment Agency, and that permit itself would require a habitat direct assessment. So wherever you turn to,
yes,
your mess is caught.
Well, the only thing is with the cesspit, it is taken away legally and disposed of, one hopes legally, you know.
Yeah.
It's the grey water, it's your bath water. You see no more baths, anybody has said. Yes, John.
Yeah, just again, hopefully to give comfort, Madam Chair, that was a specific question I asked at the last meeting. What about treatment plants? Because, you know, tends to be what's used nowadays, because actually a lot of our water comes out of the aquifer, and these things sit on top of the aquifer. So they are intimately connected, and that is something that Royal Sconia are aware of and will be developing. But so yes, I have already asked that question, and it is being looked at.
Good, good. And as I've said before, yes, Angela, come to you. This has been about for years and years and years, and it's only now people are really beginning to deal with this problem of phosphates, etc., in our waterways. Yes, Andrew.
Just to move on to a different subject under this agenda item, Chair. I was wondering whether we could include in the statistics the cases which we extend, that we have extensions of time on, both applied for and either refused or agreed, measured against a national metric. I wonder if, I don't see that here, I may have missed something, but I just wondered whether it would be useful to have that included in the development performance analysis.
I thought we did do that.
Yeah, so in the figures, obviously not this month's and last month's, but earlier figures, we showed a list, a number of decisions where an extension of time has been secured, and also where we make a decision within that extension of time period, because it's one thing to ask for an extension of time, but it's another thing to make sure you deliver that decision within that extended period. So those figures were presented. I can make sure that we encompass that. Yeah, it's all part of our return to government in terms of our performance. So it's data we hold, so it's not something that's hard to get. So yes.
Yeah, are we all in agreement we'd like that put in, the referrals, etc., deferred? Right, have we finished with this? Okay, onwards and upwards. Number 11, the decisions and appeals.
Again, I wasn't proposing to sort of go through in detail on every case. So it's really a question of whether members had any questions about particular appeals. I'm aware there's been some development on one of our sort of long-standing cases in Cly, which I can update on. But
yes.
if members had any,
I did ask you on Tuesday about sea falling. You found out about that? It's within the restricted area, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on the north side of the road.
That's that. If you do know sea falling, you know there is a large section that runs parallel to the coast, which we restrict building on quite rightly because a large surge and it'll all go under. So anyway, yes, Richard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just with respect to North Horsham enforcement. I see that the enforcement notice was quashed. Was there a reason it was quashed? Is it?
Did you want to speak on this, Nigel, at all, or was that something else?
I'm sorry.
Go on then.
My understanding is it's technical issue as to why it was quashed. So there are learning points for ourselves as an enforcement authority in terms of how we draft our notices. My understanding is that doesn't stop us reserving a notice in a slightly different way. So it's not necessarily the end of the matter. It doesn't bring an end to any potential enforcement proceedings. It just means that we would have to reserve a notice that addresses any deficiencies that an inspector has previously identified. Yeah.
What is it actually? Because it just says here, doesn't it? A new dwelling. Oh, crumbs.
Darryl says he can give some background if you like, because he knows more about that case than I do.
It was discussed at the enforcement panel on Tuesday. I think the problem with the notice was that I think it referred to an annex, but I think the developer had changed it to a dwelling. Between us serving the notice. Yeah. And so if the notice referred to an annex, but I think it's actually a dwelling, but there was permission was refused for an annex, like Councillor Lloyd said, because of its size and the effect on the on neighbours. So but the inspector didn't make any consideration under ground A whether it was acceptable or not. So if we've got to consider serving a new notice.
I've got a feeling we did see this, the original one, which came through as an annex, and as we know, it didn't come to committee, no, but we have had these where they've come with we'd have thrown it out. Well, not necessarily thrown it out. Okay. I think we do have to look at certain things now with regard to planning. I was talking to Lauren about it this morning, and you mentioned it on Tuesday, didn't you, about various things which we need to tighten up on, and local members being involved in developments in their area. Sometimes they are missed, which is unfortunate because, as you said, if you'd known this was going through, you would have queried it. No. Well, but we can rectify it. We can go around and do it another way. Yes, Jack.
I was just going to say that there's clearly some learning points on this, isn't there, in terms of what can we do better as an enforcement authority. And I'm sure the new enforcement manager will be working with Philip as line manager to ensure this sort of thing. I mean, it's not in anyone's interest to have errors that things go wrong. So we want to make sure we get it right and involve the right people. So if that's involving colleagues in legal to make sure that a notice is legally correct, because that's often where people try and find holes in a notice. Is it legally flawed? And so, yeah, it's just using the skills we have in the council to make sure we get it right.
Nigel, you want to say something?
Two quick points, Madam Chairman. First off, thank you, John, for your and Andrew on the water treatment. It is important, this nutrient thing. I know we've got briefings, as I've said, but people are looking in on Zoom as well. And I think that, you know, to keep us as much as even outside briefings, what you've done, I thank you for that. Secondly, Jeff, our long-running friend, Arcady, I see that it's coming up for another informal hearing for a postponement. Is there any danger of that being postponed yet again, or what's the situation on that long-running saga? Thank you.
It has been postponed. So it was scheduled, as you see on the bottom of page 35, for the 22nd and the 23rd of June. My understanding, having spoken to the enforcement officer, was that there was an issue of a lot of additional information coming in at the last minute. And it was concluded that there's a lot to try and consider and respond to within the short time frame. What we're less than 2.5 weeks away from that taking place. So the planning inspector have agreed to defer that. We have no date. It could well be the autumn later on this year. So we don't have an official date. But obviously, once we get a date, we'll share that with members. But yeah, that's another gap that the dwelling remains in a position with its planning status not clarified. So it's not helpful, but we have to work with the planning inspectorate and their timeframes.
I've got 3 people wish to speak. John, Toy, Andrew, and then Victoria. John?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It was a huge amount of documentation they put in last minute. I am in conversation with Philip Rosen. I'm looking for briefings on. I'm not happy with the way the inspectors dealt with it, I must say, because we had local representation that people wanted to put in. They were told it was too late, and now the applicant put stuff in. So I'm not happy with the way PINS has dealt with this. What we can do about that, I need briefings and understanding on that. It's not something I have knowledge of. But it isn't acceptable. We do need to get a decision. I mean, Victoria is aware as the local member. I keep her copied in on what's going on. And I will be having that conversation with Philip next week to see. It's all very well they pick us up for a procedural thing that's one word. There's something feels unright about this as well. So I am questioning it, but I can't give any comfort as to what that will be at the moment because I don't have that knowledge. That's something that I need to learn, and officers will advise me on that. But it is a long-running saga, and we are desperately trying to get this wrapped up for everybody's sake. So I don't think I have any more to add. Jeff said about the delay and the reasons why. The bonus is now that hopefully this local representation can now be added in as well. I would like to think that would be the case. So thank you.
Andrew.
Just following on from that, I just want to ask Jeff what our options are in terms of applying for an order for costs against the applicant. It's my understanding that this isn't the first time the applicant has used this tactic to delay the process with pins. And whilst I accept what Councillor Toy says about the how pins have performed and their shortcomings, I hope that we will press very hard for a costs award. This is impacting massively on officer time the longer this goes on. And I think the time has come. I don't know what's happened in the past with late submission of material by the applicant, but the time has come now to impose the maximum sanction through an application for costs on the applicant, so that in future the applicant will be dissuaded from delaying matters in this manner.
Okay, thank you. Victoria, do you want to come in first, Jeff?
What's the actual duration of the whole process? Because if you look on the government website, it says that the mean time for an enforcement appeal is 112 weeks. Are we outside of that?
I'm not clear of the exact weekage, but I imagine we're well beyond that. This will be running on for a long period of time. I don't think the normal, and this is an exception rather than sort of a normal sort of time frame, from my understanding.
Isn't that something that one could discuss with the inspector? The fact that it's way outside the data that we're supplied with, showing that how
Well, it
everyone
seems to
else
be-
is performing much better.
Yeah, but the inspectorate seems to have its own time frame. I have to tell you this. And there has been some sort of question in the past about the neutrality of the inspectors when they're dealing with such complicated situations as this. They should, as we all know, inspectors are supposed to sit there, as I do to a large extent, and not to be persuaded one way or the other by personal preference. So I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but it is something that has to be taken into account. It is their neutrality. Yes, Jeff.
I mean, it is challenging because you can't challenge an inspector's decision and go to a higher authority other than go to the Secretary of State. But the Secretary of State would have to wait for their inspector to make a conclusion on the decision anyway. So you've got to have the public inquiry or the informal hearing to then get the Secretary of State view on it. So yeah, I mean, it's clearly frustrating because it's protracting the process, and it's hard sometimes not to think there's a game being played to try and string these sort of things out. But I mean, as to any cost award, I'm just conscious we're obviously being recorded here. It's perhaps not the arena for having what could be a legal discussion about whether they meet the cost thresholds. But clearly that's something that the legal advisors will need to look at, because if they have breached the costs regulations, then why would we not want to seek our costs back if we've been put to expense by an applicant who might be considered to be behaving unreasonably? So it's certainly been our gift to consider that.
Yes, thank you. Andrew, did you want to speak?
Yeah, just briefly, are we intending to put some comms out that it is actually the planning inspectorate that have postponed this hearing? Because we shouldn't expect the public to understand the difference between the planning inspectorate and this planning authority. I'm sure in the minds of the public, we are more or less tarred with the same brush. Are we putting out a clear message to our residents that it's not this planning authority that is delaying this process, it's the planning inspectorate that's doing it?
Well, speaking with the appeal officers yesterday, I did suggest a comms message goes out to that effect, just so people know what's going on, because it's quite close to the day. People will be preparing to attend the Clive Village Hall, where it's scheduled to take place. So it's making sure everybody knows it's not taking place, and then what the future situation looks like. Obviously, until we know a date for the informal hearing, it's hard to say much to the public. But clearly, they need to know that, as you say, it's not through our actions that this has been delayed, it's through actions of others.
Yeah, yes, John.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just I can obviously add a little bit more to that in that effectively the planning inspector for the delay has had to make a decision partly because of our saying this is too much too late. You know, the amount of stuff that was delivered on the last day to the planning inspector, and I believe we didn't get it till a week later. For us to have got through that, to meet the timescale, we challenged that we felt this wasn't, we didn't ask for a delay, we just felt it was unacceptable, but the planning inspector has decided to make that a delay so that we can consider all the extra evidence that's been put forward. So, yeah, it's more about the applicant coming at the last minute with a huge amount of stuff that's caused the issue. But there is a comms plan. Where we deal with the compensation is already part of the discussion and length of time as well. So just again, just to ensure people, there are things that I'm discussing so we can try and, you know, I'm desperate to try and get this done for everybody involved.
Yeah.
It's time to wrap this up.
It is a very difficult case.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate this. It's somebody's family home, which I think is obviously having an influence on decisions, but unfortunately, there's a certain amount of game play possibly going on here. We just are not, I'm not aware of the reasons why. Right, if we finish with the appeals section, have we finished now, Jeff? We go on to item 12, no exclusion of press and public. No private business as far as I know, no exempt business, Lauren, no. So I now declare this meeting over at 11:12. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.